And welcome back to Open Your Eyes, a cool Tuesday morning across the country. We're now venturing off into our second segment for the morning. We've got the rep in from the U.S. Embassy, and we'll be talking about Beyond the Horizon 2020. The Chargé d'Affaires from the U.S. Embassy of Belize is here with us. He is Keith Gilges. I got it correctly this time.
I answered lots of things. That was great.
Sir, good morning, and it's nice to have you again.
Well, thank you very much. It
Yes,
feels
sir.
like I was just here. I think it was about 3 weeks ago. So thanks for having me back again. I hope I'm not showing up too often.
I think that means you like our coffee.
Yes,
I
it
do.
does.
The coffee is delicious, and I appreciate the company even more.
Beyond the Horizon 2020, I'll tell you what, it is something that the country is very thankful for. Like Marlene mentioned a while ago, especially having these medical clinics, there were a lot of people who tried their best to take advantage. So let's expand into it as to the Beyond the Horizon 2020. Refresh our memory, what is it?
So Beyond the Horizon is an exercise that we do, and it largely involves U.S. active duty military personnel, reservists, and National Guard folks who come in. And now our idea is that for our folks to be operationally ready, they need to practice. They need to do these exercises. And when we've got a partner like Belize, we say, hey, listen, if we're going to have our folks refurbish and expand buildings, why don't we work with our partners in Belize to say, hey, let's do this here. You know, for anybody that's traveled overseas, you know, your expectations of what it is are always a little bit different from when you actually get there. So for our folks to be at their best, they have these opportunities to do these exercises. So something like this costs us in the range of about, we're spending about $1 million to bring the folks in. But as long as we're doing it, let's actually make sure there's an impact on the ground. So we'll be refurbishing, doing construction projects at 4 schools, 1 medical clinic.
Wow.
We'll actually be then conducting medical clinics in 4 different communities up north, and we'll actually be doing a livestock veterinary clinic and a surgical clinic. So again, it's an opportunity that benefits Belize. The impact of this continues because the facilities are there, the schools are refurbished and improved. And at the same time, our folks have an opportunity to exercise their skills and do these things. So it really is a win-win for both sides.
How do you identify what areas you want to work in, especially in the construction work?
Yeah.
Sure. So it's a large process that began many, many months ago. In fact, the previous Beyond the Horizon exercise was in 2017, and it was in southern Belize. At that time, they said, well, next time we come, if we get funding, if we're able to do these exercises, if they continue, let's do it in the north. So the process of identifying then where is done something cooperatively with the government of Belize. And so our military planners and our folks at the embassy will work with the Ministry of Health, will work with the Ministry of Education, and they'll say, well, hey, there is a need in this area, or there is a need in that area. And then our folks come in, and have been for many months, and look at the site and say, okay, if we're going to do this, do we logistically have the capacity and the roads to get our things in? Can the helicopters land here?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these exercises, you say, the point of the spear, the real effort is the clinic that goes on. But to put that person in the place to provide that medical service, somebody's got to be feeding them, somebody's got to get them there. So there's the whole logistical tail.
Yeah.
So all of this is the process of the exercise. And so we need to make sure that that site makes sense for what we're going to be able to do. Because at the end of the day, we want it all to be a great benefit. And making sure we've got it in the right spot. So it's very much a cooperative effort between the U.S. and Belize to identify and confirm these sites.
So north is in Corozal.
It's in Corozal.
Yeah. Now, the Beyond the Horizon, I know the last time I was sharing with you that the medical clinics had long lines and people were really taking advantage of the care and the checkups that they could receive there. As you've clearly said, that's just one component of what you're going to be doing. It's about being able to offer that to the residents of that area. But talk to me about what the military personnel gain from this experience, other than just being able to work in a foreign country.
Well, that is a large part of it.
Yeah.
Is for many of these folks, this might be their first deployment overseas. And so arriving someplace new, they get the experience, okay, this is what it's like in an environment. If they're practicing and saying, well, let's run a med clinic somewhere in Florida, okay, well, hey, we ran out of X or Y. Oh, well, you might be able to run down to the store and buy those sorts of things. Well, operating in a different environment, you may not have that capacity.
Yeah.
You know, so if we want to say our medical clinics and our medical facilities, we're able to move and set them up anywhere, they need to practice that. So getting that kind of experience is just invaluable. Now, we could do it where we say, hey, would you mind if we use that field for a little while? We'll set up a medical clinic. We'll see if it all works.
Yeah.
And when it does, we're like, okay, great, we're done. We'll pack all up and go. Or can we say, while we're here, we've set all this up. We've got the capacity. Let's put it to good use.
Yeah.
And so there will be hundreds of people that will be treated. I'm gonna, if you'll excuse me, I'll
Yeah,
look at
sir,
sort of
you
the
do
list
that.
of things here. So from general medicine, women's health, preventative medical education, dental care, optometry, immunizations, pharmacy services, pediatric and
Yeah.
family care. So all
Yeah.
these things
It's a wide range.
are going to be offered. It's a wide range of
Yeah.
things because that's what's needed.
In terms of I'm not sure if you had mentioned the start time for it and what the duration is going to be.
So, I mean, for me, it feels like it already started because we've got folks coming in and out.
Yeah.
Again, going to the sites, talking to the Ministry of Health, talking to the Ministry of Education to make sure that once we move in, you know, once the planes fly in with facilities, everything works like clockwork. When the actual activity, when folks might see people on the ground, might see a helicopter overhead, it's starting in May and it'll run through August.
Oh, wow.
The bulk of that time is in June and July. So we will have a launch sometime in May. You know, these activities will be ongoing. We estimate about 250 U.S. service personnel will be coming in and out. At any one time, there might be 50 people on the ground.
Yeah.
But this team is coming and it has its function, and then it leaves. The next team comes in, again, to have this whole pretty large exercise operate as seamlessly as possible.
Now, it is important for people to know that this groundwork is taking place, because if we see military troops moving around or aircrafts hovering, you know, there's a lot of suspicion that people would have.
Listen, we don't want any of this to take anybody by surprise. So this doesn't happen till May. I'm here in January to start spreading the word. We're going to keep spreading the word. You know, let me speak candidly. This is also an election year in Belize.
Yes.
I want to be very clear that this May, June, July, August, the site locations, everything else was determined a long time ago in cooperation with our Belizean partners. So later on, if suddenly somebody sees a helicopter in the sky, it is far beyond the horizon. This has been planned well in advance.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that word gets out. That's really why I'm here.
So you weren't asked to have this clinic in an election year specifically, it was just...
These things get planned, you know. In 2017, they said, okay, we are literally looking out 3 years. You know, the military can move quickly, but to move that amount of stuff, to move it well, to have the money in place, takes time and planning.
Yeah.
And they are excellent at planning, and so they have been at this for a long time, you know, and working with us at the embassy, working with, again, I said, you know, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, to put on these projects.
So it is every 3 years, 2017 to now 2020.
Correct.
And then we move on. So again, folks should know it's not because of an election is coming.
It is not.
It's because they've done this groundwork so many years before. Now, we did mention as to the educational process. Now, these folks will also be in, and they'll be helping to build educational facilities. And can you give us some of the areas that this have been done already?
So, you know, there were a number of communities in southern Belize. Again, I wasn't here for that, so I can't speak to it as directly. I know for the Beyond the Horizon 2020, there will be 4 communities up north: Chan Chen, Paraíso, San Pedro, and San Antonio, I believe, that will be having schools, portions of them, some construction going on, some things refurbished at those schools, and then the clinic, the medical clinic, will also be built in Chan Chen. So those are those 4 communities. We haven't yet finalized the communities where we'll be having the health clinics, but again, that'll be set up in advance.
Of course. Yeah.
Folks will know, here's the treatment that's coming in, to make sure that we're able to bring the people in on the right day, at the right time. We don't want huge lines out front as best possible. We want to make sure we're maximizing the amount of time that they're here to provide these services.
So we don't know the exact location, but we do know the region. It'll be in the north. And we do know the type of specialized care that will be offered as well. And these are, you know, they're military personnel, but they're trained medical professionals as well.
Yeah. As with, you know, members of my family, one of the great benefits to joining the military was, it's my brother-in-law's brother, had his medical school paid for, because then he returned that number of years as a doctor in the Navy. A great family friend of ours who lived across the street when I was growing up, he had done the same thing, and they continued in the Naval Reserve for years after that. But again, so a lot of these folks will go on to private practice afterwards. But having this opportunity to do this kind of medical care in an environment that's different, in a place that's different, and showing what our capacities are, is that's where we get that experience out of it. But we're providing real care to our partners in Belize.
It is a massive undertaking, if I recall, from 2017. What's the estimated number of personnel that's going to be on the ground during that time?
So we think we'll be rotating in about 250 people total coming in and out. But if somebody says, okay, well, my specialty is this part of a construction project. I'm an electrical specialist or I'm a plumbing specialist, and as part of this, I have that function. So they might come in, do a few days' work, and go back out again. But we're constantly going to be then moving people in and out. So they're here when they need to be here. They're not here when they aren't. But part of that is then all these folks have to stay somewhere. They've got to eat some food, and they are absolutely going to be eating some delicious Belizean local food. But again, we will be contracting with local providers to say, hey, we need you to set up the mess. So these folks get up in the morning, they've got their food, they go off, they do their work, they've got lunch. And so this is also an economic boon. Anytime you're moving this number of people in and out, there are all sorts of costs associated with it. And again, that goes right back into those communities and into Belize.
It is a part of the win-win situation there. Because if you're moving from one spot to another and you're expanding on your expertise, that of course is a win-win. Now, while we've got Beyond the Horizon and we've expanded on that, and we know exactly when it's going to be and how many people will be challenging it or taking it on, we also got to understand that the U.S. Embassy have teamed up with a foundation to shed light on an educational aspect, which of course will benefit the country. Can you expand on that, if you may, please?
This is about some of our grants, our CARSI grants for programs. Well, we have a whole range of things that we work on here, and part of my effort coming into these programs is to talk about all these different things. But there's an awful lot that folks may not know, and that we work on. And so part of the Caribbean Central American Regional Regional Security Initiative are these CARSI ESF grants. And so every year we provide, I think this past year we announced 3 grants, each for around $250,000. And for the past 2 years, it's been focused on issues of good governance. And so working with civil society organizations, working with the government to improve their interaction with civil society organizations. This past year, it was working with CSOs on human trafficking. Again, the idea is the better the governance is, the better run a country is going to be. And so, as much as we will often through USAID provide health assistance in place, whatever else, the better the government is able to provide it itself, the better civil society organizations are able to partner with the government so everybody maximizes what skills they bring to the table. That means that each country moves more towards its pathway towards complete self-reliance.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
And that's the reason why we're so appreciative of the work that the U.S. Embassy and Belize have teamed up to do, because one of the things that we were talking about with Senator Lizarraga is the educating the people as to moving forward. Learning about good governance and learning about how to identify things, especially when it comes to governmental organizations and how it's run, it's one of the best things that can benefit your people. Back to Horizon 2020. We work along with locals and the internationals alike. I know that you're not, being that this is your first,
my first Beyond the Horizon.
Yes, your first Beyond the Horizon. I'm sure though that you've spoken to some of the people who have been around it for a long time. What are their sentiments in working along with, especially in a country like this one?
Well, I think, one of these programs, what they do is also build goodwill. So for all the people that are coming in, my message to the Americans is, remember, every day, everything you do, you are representing the United States of America. but your ability then to reach right down into the communities at the most local level, that may be the first time that somebody has had a chance to interact with a member of our military, or has had a chance to interact with a member of the government at a time when they're vulnerable and they need something. And building that kind of goodwill is, goes a long way to increasing what I always mention when I'm here, but the affinity between the people of the United States and the people of Belize. I work at a government level, but there is so much more to the partnership that exists between our two countries than what my government is doing or what your government is doing, is what the people are doing together. And whether it's a beyond the horizon type exercise, or whether it's a lot of the private medical teams that will come down as part of NGOs. I mean, I will be traveling around the country and I might run into these folks. I have no idea they're here. They don't have to clear their activities with me. They're coming in as a private foundation to do work here. But we as two peoples benefit from all those types of exchanges.
Yeah, it's an important relationship. I think there are a couple issues I wanted to discuss. First of all, I know it is very important to get a bit of comment from you in terms of what's happening with the missing tourist, Allison McKenzie. This search, as far as we know, is still underway. I know you are the liaison for the family, the embassy, that is. Talk to us a bit about that.
Well, I don't want to speak to the specifics of that case, obviously, but one of the primary functions of the U.S. Embassy is to look after our citizens. And so, when an individual, when this sort of event happens, where we can help, we do. It's often information exchange. It's helping out the family back in the States. What information do they need? How can we help out? And so we have a whole section at the embassy called American Citizen Services. And there's a large resident population here. And so they really focus on providing those services. But again, we always will do this in cooperation with the Belizean government, because they have jurisdiction and they're the hosts here.
Has there been any request for assistance in terms of getting investigators in or people to assist in the search and rescue?
Not that I'm aware of yet. But again, I have to admit that I've got an amazing team of people at the embassy. And if a request comes out and the answer is, we should do that, they don't have to wait for a go-ahead from me. It's like, and we always say, let's empower the people who know the most at the action level to make the decision. If it's an easy decision, I don't need to make it. Don't waste time waiting for me or waking me up. It's like, go ahead and make the call, tell me about it later. So again, that request may have come. I don't want to say it hasn't, but it would come directly, sort of security service to say, and let's activate it. And they may be working on it now.
It's a very sad case. So moving on to another issue, we also saw the response from a member of our National Security Council in preparing for the possibility of a migrant caravan moving through Belize. And we got word, in fact, that they moved from Guatemala to Mexico, making their way to your homeland. It still is a continuous challenge for the United States, and I know you're still working with partners in Central America. Can I get your comment on looking at the continuous development of the migrant issue?
Yeah, sure. So listen, every country has the right to protect its borders and to determine who is allowed to enter and isn't allowed to enter. That's the same for the United States as it is for Belize. As we look at the migrant issue, one of the key things is to address the drivers of migration. So how can we help improve the economic opportunities in communities in Guatemala, in communities in Honduras, in communities in El Salvador, so that people say, hey, we have a future here. This trek north is dangerous. It's hazardous. And the fact that people are willing to do it speaks to the conditions that exist at home. So we want to promote legal migration, the legal movement of people. But if folks are, are migrating without the proper documentation, everything, they are also putting themselves at risk. So when we look at it from my perspective, as the U.S. representative here in Belize, obviously, if a large migrant caravan were to come into Belize, it's a wholly different, ratio, the number of people arriving here. This is a smaller country with smaller services. And so it's that much more difficult. So it's something we were very much paying attention to. Will this become, or is there a threat that this could become a migrant pathway that folks move through Belize? That's obviously something we want to work with the Belizean government to prevent from happening, because the tax that would put on Belizean resources would be enormous. And again, it's an order of magnitude different. Your neighboring countries have greater capacities. They're just larger population, larger governments. We don't want to put for Belize to be in that situation.
As a government representative, U.S. government representative in Central America, I think, what's your perspective in terms of the level of understanding of the challenges that the Central American migrants are facing and why they're fleeing up north? Because it's not very often a part of the broader conversation.
So, as a representative here in Belize, Belize is not a source country for these caravans. And so my goal is to help Belize not become drawn into that issue. Because it has, as we've seen in the past, had an impact on our foreign assistance levels and everything. And I'd like to keep things the way they are. I'm quite comfortable with how things are working out. And for the migrant issues, for things that are happening in Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, that is also not my area of expertise. But clearly, you have to look at it holistically. We don't want people sitting up at the border that don't have a legal mechanism to cross in. So trying to provide alternatives to that so that they don't undergo this sort of arduous and dangerous trek north, frequently where they're giving money to coyotes and other, human smugglers. In this instance, if the people want to go for a bigger reason, we call it smuggling. If they don't realize and they're being trafficked for illegal purposes, we call that trafficking. So there is a difference. Folks want to go. But again, it is criminal syndicates that are running these smuggling networks. But again, you got to go back to what are the drivers, and to make sure that as you're dealing with it, you're trying to deal with the issue comprehensively. And that is looking at the security situation, the economic situation that drive people to feel they need to leave their home,
walk.
and trek someplace unknown, because the idea that it will be better when they get there.
Is there a partnership established with the National Security Council in being able to prevent the caravans from coming into Belize? Because, so far, we've not seen the caravans move this way, even though we know we have fairly porous borders.
We cooperate very closely with folks throughout the Belizean government, but absolutely with the Security Council. We have representatives here from Customs and Border Protection. Oftentimes, what we can bring to the table is a capacity to know what's happening other places. We've got operations in Guatemala and a big embassy in Honduras and in El Salvador. So we are tracking these things, so we're able to share that information. At the same time, this is Belize's neighborhood, and folks here often know what's going on. So a lot of what we're able to do is share information so that the necessary resources can be put in place in case, so that plans can be made in the event that something happens.
For the most part, these people are not saying that, yes, to a certain extent, they're saying that, we're running away from the economical situation in our country, but at the same time, their biggest fear are the gangs. So what's going on there? So in terms of how trying to quell that situation?
So there are various things that drive people to choose to do that. An awful lot of folks who are traveling are economic migrants. I think I can get a better job there, so I'm leaving here to go there. And it is for economic reasons. Those are the tough cases that, somebody gets to the border, and just because you want to have a job in the United States doesn't mean you have any right to that. There are people that are fleeing persecution. There are people that are fleeing violence. Those folks then have an opportunity under the international system to seek asylum. Now, they can seek asylum here, and many people have. And there are cases that are pending with the government here where people are seeking asylum because they fear persecution, they fear gangs, they fear violence back in their home country. So those are the asylum cases. What gets tricky is when you've got a few valid asylum cases and an awful lot of economic migrants. It's trying to tell those apart. And that's where the capacity to enter the United States under asylum is very different than if you just show up and say, hey, I'd like to have a job across the border. And that's where it gets tricky. We do still are the #1 immigrant country in the world. We still accept more immigrants into the United States than any other country. I think than most other countries combined. So we hear a lot about immigration. We still are a country of immigrants and we still accept a lot. But again, the reason to allow somebody to come in, whether it's asylum or economic migration, there are different factors that determine whether or not you can legally cross the border.
And do the efforts still continue for the safe third country?
So Safe Third Country was an agreement that we entered into with Canada back in 2002, which basically said if an asylum seeker arrives in the US first, they can't transit through the US, go to Canada and say, I'd like asylum in Canada. Alternatively, they can't enter Canada and then cross into the US and say, okay, I entered Canada on a tourist visa, but I'm crossing the border into the US and now seeking asylum. It is whatever country you first enter into, that is where you should seek asylum. That term has then been used, in terms of agreements we've sought with Mexico, with Guatemala, with other countries in Central America. We're using different terminology. It's the amnesty cooperation agreements to then say, listen, rather than have folks sitting at the US border, does it make more sense if they felt threatened in Honduras that they are allowed to reside in another country in the region while their asylum applications are being processed? And so that's the ACA that we have with Guatemala. I believe we've signed one with Honduras, but again, I want to be a little careful about speaking about the other countries because they're not under my purview.
But the agreement has been signed, and just in terms of progress, where are we with that?
So there have been repatriations. There have been folks that while their cases are pending within the U.S., their asylum cases, that they have been relocated back down to Guatemala. My understanding, and again, not my area of expertise, but that many of those folks have said, well, rather than wait in Guatemala, they will actually return to their home countries while those cases are being processed. It is still, we're talking very small numbers.
Okay. Wow. And while we're on the topic of Guatemala, before we run out of time, the president, the new president, took over in last week, Tuesday, I believe, President Giamatti. And one of his first interviews, he spoke of the process of going to the ICJ. He's requesting, or he has stated that he will request a meeting through the OAS to be able to discuss with Belize the possibilities of moving forward with the territorial dispute. I'd just like to get a comment as someone who's been, as a nation that has been very involved in this process, helping to sponsor, I know, some of the education and putting forward your position. What's the role of countries like the U.S. in this process now?
Yeah, this is a dispute between Guatemala and Belize. Yeah. The international community, the Friends of Guatemala and Belize, got together to help open up the political space to say, listen, while you seek a final determination on this dispute, let's make sure it's done through a logical, peaceful process. And that's where the international community was able to come in. Again, should there be an initiative by Guatemala, to say, the case has gone to the ICJ. Both countries agreed, so it's there. I believe Guatemala has a year from June 8th, so they've got another 6 months to present their case. If a new president came in and said, hey, let's talk about a process that we might be able to reach some agreement, barring that. I mean, that may be what President Giamatti, I can't put words in his mouth. He hasn't called me to ask my opinion on it. But any time there's an opportunity for two leaders or for people to get together to seek to resolve it, bring the right goodwill to the table, new players can offer new opportunities for some type of resolution. So I don't know what President Giamatti may propose, but getting together to talk about it, to have two leaders, get to know each other through some capacity, that's always a good thing. It's always good to have that personal relationship with somebody in addition to the professional, positions that people hold. There's amazing things that can happen when two people get together and say, let's resolve this.
Okay.
All right.
Well, we thank you for coming in and being able to talk about all these issues. It's a very interesting day in the United States as well. So I know a lot of people are going to be glued to the American news. But once again, we thank you for coming in and letting us know ahead of time that the preparatory work for Beyond the Horizon starts.
Yep.
And by May into the summer, people can expect to see some construction work and also medical clinics in the north. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me on. Always appreciate the time.
We're going to go ahead and take that break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the male volleyball championship. So please stay tuned.